Hello, everyone. The SPO office is very excited to present our third presentation of the Deep Energy Retrofit webinar series. My name is Elizabeth Hitchman, and I'm a Management Program Analyst in the Sustainability Performance Office. Today, we also have with us Chris Trumper from FEMP, Cody Rakoff from our SPO office, and Danny Alcon from Sandia National Laboratories. Before we get started, we need to go over some general housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded and may be posted on DOE's website or used internally. If you do not wish to have your voice recorded, please do not speak during the call. If you do not wish to have your image recorded, please turn off your camera or participate by phone. If you speak during the call or use a video connection, you are presumed consent to recording and use of your voice or image. Please make sure that your phone is muted so we can avoid any background noises. So again, if you are not muted, please make sure that you are, especially because it is being recorded. We have a Q&A session at the end, so please make sure you have placed your question in the chat feature, and please specify which presenter you are addressing. A copy of the presentation and a recording of the session will be available after the webinar. So this is today's agenda. We have Introduction to EISA 432, Implementing EISA 432, the importance of submitting energy efficiency projects to the dashboard, EISA 432 reporting requirements, how to enter EISA data to the sustainability dashboard, Sandia Labs EISA data process in Albuquerque, and finally, our Q&A roundtable. Okay, great. So now we've come to the first part of our presentation, Introduction to EISA 432. What is EISA 432? What's a statute? That means it's a requirement for the agency. Section 432 of the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007, as you can see in the numbers in the columns, the management of energy and water efficiency in federal buildings. The purpose is to establish a comprehensive approach for deploying energy and water efficiency and conservation measures, or ECMs, in federal facilities and monitoring performance of projects. This statute applies to all federal agencies. At a minimum, agencies must designate that facilities that consume 75% of the site's total energy, and that includes on-site generated renewables, covered and assigned and to a facility manager to ensure compliance with those requirements. And this is just a list of the statute that you can see here. So it's seen in the poll that once every 4 years, you have to complete a comprehensive energy and water evaluation of all covered facilities. You must implement these identified efficiency measures, including recommissioning, retrocommissioning, and continuous commissioning measures. Follow up with implemented ECMs with measurement and verification. You are to benchmark metered facilities that are or are part of covered facilities. And most importantly, report and track compliance in a web-based tracking system, which would be our sustainability dashboard. Okay, great. So now we've come to the second part of the presentation, the actual implementation of EISA 432. There are 7 areas today that we're going to cover, which I think are the most important parts, so that you can understand what it is that needs to actually be submitted. First, we're going to talk about what designates to be a covered facility, how you assign the facility the energy manager to the audit, evaluating covered facilities, show what the different evaluation audit types are, a brief description of the different types of commissioning, the ES 432 evaluation, and the evaluation completion of measures. So designating covered facilities. This is the first area of implementation that we're covering today. So the utilization of the asset is based on mission. Obviously, mission is the most crucial part, obviously, of anything that we do here at DOE. So whatever you're doing is that asset is based on your mission. Current and anticipated total site delivered energy use, including renewable energy. So consider all goal subject and excluded energy consuming assets for which the federal government pays the utilities, and that includes government owned contractor operated facilities. This does not include shared leased assets. You must prioritize assets likely to stay in the site's portfolio for 4 or more years. And the reason for this is so that it ensures consistency with the disposition year in FEMS. You also want to maximize the benefit of audits and commissioning, which we will cover a little bit later. It is advised to consider the following when selecting a covered facility. Assets should come from the same servicing utility, so you cannot have two different utility bills for this building to facilitate the data aggregation. You have to rank the assets with the greatest energy use in descending order until 75% of total energy use threshold is reached. 75%. If you're unable to meet the 75% threshold, please reach out to your program office or SPO for advice on how to deal with those that don't meet the 75% threshold. In general, keep covered facilities consistent during the 4-year period. But if changes are needed, please reach out again to the program office or SPO for advice. So what is an energy manager? Well, per the statute, it means the individual is responsible for ensuring compliance with the subsection of the facility. So the individual can be a contractor of the facility, a part-time employee of a facility, and an individual who is responsible for multiple facilities. At a minimum, the trained energy manager should be able to prove that they've demonstrated proficiency or has completed a course of study in the areas of fundamentals for building energy systems. So building energy codes, they understand the professional standards, accounting, analysis, etc. The minimum requirement can be found in the Federal Building Personnel Training Act of 2010. But I would say, most importantly, they should really be a certified energy manager or CEM. Starting in 2008, and annually thereafter within a 4-year period, all covered facilities must complete an energy and water evaluation. There are 2 components. You have the audit and you have the commissioning assessment. The audit component can be standardized by the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning, which of course we commonly refer to as ASHRAE. Of course, we have level 1, 2, 3, and some other ones as well. The concepts and process of ASHRAE can be applied to water, and it also applies to recommissioning, retrocommissioning, continuous commissioning. When planning audits, consider setting up a 4-year project plan and schedule for assets to be evaluated each year during the evaluation type level audit team and estimated budget. Combine the evaluation with other types of walkthrough assessments, which we will go through, and in an internal optimization evaluation. Leveraging existing processes, of course, is important, and of course, involve the facility maintenance team. A level 2 audit is recommended for the first time covered facility audits. Level 2 is probably the most common. Most people don't usually bother with the lower levels unless it's a really small building that you're just trying to check, but we'll go through all the different types of audits. So we have ASHRAE level 1. Again, very preliminary. It's pretty much, you just look at utility invoice, look at the data. You can talk to on-site personnel, probably your facility manager. You review the assets, the operating hours, personnel, etc., and of course the mission requirements. You'll do a room-by-room walkthrough just to identify the areas of inefficiency and develop, of course, your no-cost, low-cost measures. And below, you just kind of have some advantages and disadvantages of the ASHRAE level 1. ASHRAE level 2, this is probably what 99.9% of people use, is the ASHRAE level 2. It's an expansion on ASHRAE Level 1, it is important asset energy use for equipment conditions and operations. It performs a much more detailed evaluation of measures, including savings and cost analysis. Utility invoices are really key for this. So make sure that someone has track of those invoices because you cannot do an audit without it. Sorry.
Excuse me, Elizabeth. The slides were not advancing when you were speaking, so just
Okay.
want to be aware
Hold
of
on, let
that.
me,
We were stuck on slide 10.
okay, hold on
Although
one second.
you can advance the slides yourself, but it wasn't synced with yours.
Yeah, let me try again. Let me just apologize for the, try again. Technology today. Okay, so let me go back to, I'll start at the EISA audits. Okay, so I apologize for that. So then we have the first audit, which is the ASHRAE Level 1. As I said before, that's pretty much just a walkthrough analysis audit that we usually do. You have to have your utility invoices, interview personnel, etc. Again, this is the most basic level of audits, and most people usually do not do the ASHRAE Level 1, but we just want to provide that information for you. The ASHRAE Level 2, again, this is what most people are usually using. It's an expansion of the Level 1. Of course, you would need your utility invoices, but it also is a more detailed evaluation of your actual measures, includes savings and costs. Utility invoices are collected for longer periods of time as well. That way you can figure out what your energy use is over usually a 12-month period. The ASHA Level 3, that's a much more detailed process, much more intensive, obviously more expensive. You're talking about here, when you're talking about like commissioning, things like that, you actually put things on to monitor your devices. But because of the different types of commissioning that are available, this is not necessarily used all that often. But it does give what I would call daily, weekly, monthly information of utility data. And of course, this is necessary with submetering, which of course many people I'm sure are familiar with. Desk audit, very basic. It's just, these are probably for smaller buildings or just buildings you're just trying to examine just to see if we should even bother doing an EISA audit. Then we also have the automated audit, which is based off of software technology. And that uses utility consumption data. So interval data, again, from your meter that you would need, more than likely you would need a smart meter to do the automated audit as well. Commissioning, probably one of the most important parts of doing an EISA audit. Commissioning assessment need and type are to be identified during the audit component. If you reference DOE Order 436.1A and 430.1B, sites are encouraged to set up a recommissioning program and recommission your facility every 3 to 5 years. However, if you are doing something like monitoring-based commissioning or continuous commissioning, which we'll describe, you more than likely you would not necessarily have to do recommissioning. Now, for the EISA 432 guidelines, commission assets or assets less than 50,000 square feet are not necessarily recommended for commissioning. So there's two scenarios where you wouldn't do that. The first one is if the covered facility does not house an energy or water intensive process and is less than 50,000 square feet, it doesn't need to be commissioned. If the covered facility does house an energy or water intensive process and is less than 25,000 square feet, you would not need to commission that building. So what are the different types of commissioning? Well, obviously there's the new construction commissioning when a building first goes up. The process of commissioning is for a new building, and in the design and construction phase, it's the most impactful because it allows the commissioning process to begin early on. And of course, you'll have a track of all the equipment that you have in the building and what the state of it was in the beginning, and it makes it a lot easier in the future to if you decide to do recommissioning or like monitoring base, things like that. The next one is recommissioning, which I just mentioned. That refers to the commissioning of an existing building. Again, the key word is existing. If you've already done it in the past. So the building has to have already been commissioned to be considered recommissioning. That's really important. This process often happens after a building becomes fully operational and the owner has a more accurate picture of how the building is being used. It is common in buildings that are aging, of course, that are older. Usually recommissioning, most people probably do, or most facility managers, energy managers, whoever, it's about 3 years before they decide to recommission it. Just depends on your budget, obviously, like everything else. It's also used to verify system efficiencies or identify possible failures, which is always really important. Retro commissioning. These are for buildings, much older buildings that were never commissioned. I know that I've done a lot of retro commissioning projects when I worked at the utility, very popular, especially where I'm located on the East Coast. A lot of buildings were not commissioned in the past. So retro commissioning is something that is used quite often. It typically aims to resolve problems that occur during design or construction or addresses issues that develop throughout the building's life as the equipment aged or as the building usage changed. The process aims to identify areas where efficiency improvements can be made. The goal is to cut energy waste, maximize energy cost savings, and identify and fix existing problems. And the last is continuous commissioning. Continuous commissioning refers to an ongoing commissioning process or program tailored to meet specific operational and sustainability goals. It leverages, of course, technology, and you can also do this with project management as well. It's an ongoing solution, obviously. That's something that you do, all the time. It never stops. It resolves operating problems, improves comfort, maximizes energy use, and is great retrofitting for existing buildings. It can also save you a lot of money. Unlike traditional commissioning, the goal is not to ensure that all the systems are functioning as originally intended. It actually ensures that the building and its systems are operating optimally to meet current requirements. In June of this year, we did a commissioning webinar specifically focused on monitoring-based commissioning and continuous commissioning, monitoring-based at Sandia Lab and continuous commissioning at Berkeley Lab. If you need more information on that webinar, please let me know and I will forward you that information. So we're getting towards the end of my part. The actual EISA 432 evaluation, once the audit evaluation is completed, the findings should be documented in a report that includes the executive summary, just a high-level description of your findings and recommendations. Asset information, of course, just, there's a few things listed here. Current conditions of the inventory, findings from interviews, audit level types, etc. So just kind of summation of all the findings of all the measures that were placed in the building. Of course, from the audits, the commissioning recommendations, etc. And of course, you'll have things like floor plans, pictures, etc. to support your evaluations. And finally, at the completion of measures within 2 years after the evaluation, 2 years, an energy manager shall implement those identified measures. So it's not something just to identify the measures, you actually have to implement them. And they have to be, of course, cost effective. Controls are commissioned. That's probably a really big one, especially right now. A plan for appropriate maintenance, of course, the repair of equipment, what the plan is for that. What is your energy and water savings? And then you want to prioritize. Is it mission critical? That's always first. What's your life cycle cost analysis for those measures? What's your impact on sustainability? And finally, the reduction of deferred maintenance, or O&M as we normally call it. Okay, great. So now we've come to the next part of the presentation, which is the importance of submitting energy efficiency projects, which will be presented by Chris Tremper. Chris is responsible for interagency data collection and reporting for the Department of Energy's Federal Energy Management Program. He developed and implemented energy, water, and greenhouse gas data annual reporting protocols that accommodated evolving policy over the last 30 years. He also stood up and maintains the web-based compliance tracking system of federal facility energy efficiency measures required by the Energy Independence and Security Act. He has provided key data and analytic support to the White House Council on Environmental Quality and Office of Management and Budget to help frame federal goals and assist agencies in meeting their reporting requirements. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Hey, everybody. Hi, Chris Tremper here. Just wanted this graphic here, one that I've trotted out for years now. I mean, we are 15 years into this legislation and tracking compliance on it. So it makes sense that we need a refresher every now and then. But this graphic pretty much summarizes what Elizabeth was talking about at the onset of the implementation of the legislation. Agencies identified covered facilities, assigned energy managers, and then there are annual things that you need to do. One of them is benchmarking the performance of your metered buildings that are or are part of your covered facilities. You also need to update your annual covered facility footprint each year. That is, what was the energy consumption of that covered facility, the square footage, if that had changed, typically does not, and water usage, etc. So those are some of the annual things that you need to do on the right. And then, as Elizabeth was describing, the 4-year process of identifying those cost-effective measures in the evaluations, bundling those ECMs into projects, seeing if they are eligible or attractive to ESCOs for implementation through performance contracting, which 50% need to be executed through that process. And then once projects are in place, there's a requirement to do a follow-up measurement and verification to ensure persistence of savings of those projects. And all of this has a reporting component. If we can go to the next slide, Elizabeth. Which I talk about at the bottom here. So the web-based compliance tracking system is what the Department of Energy Federal Energy Management Program uses to track agency progress across the government in implementing these mandates. And agencies tailor their reporting to their own needs. Some agencies upload data from the centrally managed systems, which is what DOE does with their DOE sustainability dashboard. All of that data gets entered into the dashboard and then subsequently is to be imported into CTS, where the compliance is tracked. And there's also a public-facing, that data is also available to the public. We have a public website where folks can see how each agency is doing in terms of its evaluations and implementing projects, et cetera. Moving back up the slide here, I did the highlighted text indicates some of the amendments that came out of the Energy Act of 2020. Formerly, when the legislation was first put in place, there was not a requirement for energy managers to implement those measures that they identified. The language stated that energy managers may implement within 2 years the identified measures in their facilities. The reason that was may in the legislation at the time was because this legislation was scored, and Congress, recognizing that having each energy manager having to implement those investments in 2 years would have added billions of dollars to the budget. So that's why the word was may at the time. But with the Energy Act of 2020, that may was turned into shall. So now there is a requirement after you identify those measures, you have 2 years to implement them. And then 50% of those measures, and this is measured at the agency level, not the site level, have to be implemented through performance contracts, that is ESPCs or UESCs. And that is measured in terms of the investment value of the measures that you're implementing. So in terms of the implementation cost of the measures, 50% of that has to be performed through performance contracts. Now, the only way to track compliance with this is for agencies to report on the projects that they are implementing in CTS. If we go to the next slide, I'll give you a little overview. Now, this data of DOE investment through the years shows the efficiency investment that was reported to us in the annual report to Congress. And you can see the level of investment through the years. These are in this particular graphic, these dollars are unadjusted, so it reflects the as spent budgeted amount for these projects. But you can see that in terms of what percentage of these were implemented through performance contracts, last year it was 14%, 2018 it was 70%, 2019 79%. No performance contracts were awarded in those intervening years. But if you were to look at this same data in CTS, you would see that DOE had not reported on any implemented projects in its covered facilities since all the way back in 2015. So there's a good amount of investment here that has not been reported yet in CTS, everything from 2015 forward. A little more context on the 2-year implementation requirement that came out of EISA. DOE has identified $469 million in cost-effective projects in its evaluations. Now, if we were to take this requirement seriously, that means that there's an implied annual of investment for DOE to improve its facilities of around $235 million a year. Half of that, $117 million, it should be direct funded according to the requirement. And the other $117 million or more should be implemented through performance contracts. So that just gives you an idea of what the amendment is asking for, and in terms of implementing that. So, and you can see where we are here now. The next slide I want to give you is somewhat the same data, but this is in the format of the OMB Sustainability Scorecard. This is the slide on the scorecard for DOE's efficiency investment. Now you see in this case, it's only showing the investment back to 2020. That's because one of the key metrics on the scorecard is percent of total investments that were completed through ESPCs or UESCs over the last 4 years. That is only 6%, and that reflects the ESPC that was awarded at NREL for the Flatiron campus, that $5 million project there. OMB is looking for that percentage to be above 50%, but the way they calculate it is they take the average over the last 4 years on the scorecard. This is because they recognize that performance contracting activity it fluctuates from year to year. There's an unevenness in the implementation of these projects. They have such a long development timeline, sometimes up to 1.5 years or more. So this is a way to sort of flatten out the unevenness of the activity. The other thing I'll point out, the other metric that DOE is ranked in terms of the other agency is progress on completing its facility evaluations. When we pulled this data at the beginning of the year, DOE was at 80% completion of evaluations of its covered facilities in terms of its facility energy use. OMB would like to see that above 90%. That's why the percentage is red. And in terms of other facilities, and you can see in the other agencies, excuse me, you can see the agency progress indicator. DOE is in the middle range of performance when it's ranked with all the other agencies in terms of its evaluation progress. So let's see, next slide. I'm going to talk about the deep energy retrofit goal that came out of Executive Order 14057 and how it's being tracked, and the importance of reporting on any implemented projects that you've conducted in your covered facilities since FY 2019. Now, the goal of, and this language here is from the executive order itself, the accompanying OMB memo, and the implementing instructions that clarified a lot of these requirements. A deep energy retrofit is a retrofit or a series of retrofits that are undertaken at a covered facility that reduces that facility's annual energy use by at least 40% from a pre-renovation FY 2019 baseline. So the White House and CEQ that developed this executive order, they're looking to show the progress from 2019 forward at the agencies. And the goal is that in terms of the square footage of the covered facilities within an agency's portfolio, at least 30% of that square footage of those covered facilities meet that 40% reduction from that baseline by implementing projects, whether it's one project or a series of projects over time. So in terms of what can count on this project, CEQ has been fairly lenient on what can count. In fact, we all recognize that when you award a contract for efficiency project at your site, you may not begin accruing savings until after the construction period, a year or two later. In this case, as long as you're reporting in CTS on that awarded project, you can get immediate credit for the estimated energy savings that you're expecting from that project, and it gets tracked towards that goal. And in fact, if you are far enough along in project development, if it has completed the design phase, or if it's an ESPC, if you're already past the investment grade audit phase, you can enter that information into CTS and get credit for that project as well. According to the executive order, they have designated the compliance tracking system as the designated reporting vehicle for this goal. And that's because agencies already have, under the legislation, a requirement to report on every project that you implemented in a covered facility, whether it's a performance contract, an ESPC or UESC, or direct funded projects. So that's why I'm emphasizing the importance of reporting on those projects, first through your DOE sustainability dashboard, and then ensuring that that data gets uploaded into CTS so that you can get credit. The next slide. In order to help accommodate this requirement, we did develop a special report in CTS to track the requirement. And if you are familiar with CTS and you go to DOE, you'll see the whole list of reports that you can pull. And at the bottom, you'll see the deep energy retrofit tracking report. The criteria for this report reflects the requirements of the deep energy retrofit requirements it's only looking at covered facilities. Some agencies have non-covered facilities in CTS, so it's not looking at those. It's only looking at government-owned facilities. I think most of DOE covered facilities are government-owned. And we also added a field in CTS to track project development status. So if you put a date of later than FY 2018, that is FY 2019 or later, date for the completion of your investment grade audit or design completion, that project and the associated savings you report will count toward this. Another thing to be sure to report when you're implementing on your projects is if you have an on-site generation or a renewable project, that can be treated as a conservation measure and will contribute to the annual savings of that project toward that deep energy retrofit goal. So make sure that gets reported. Your estimated annual energy savings will be used to track the goal from these implemented projects. But if you are also dutifully following up on that project by doing an M&V and reporting your measured savings in CTS for that, and those measured savings happen to be better than your estimated savings, that will be pulled into the report as well. If you have been delinquent in updating your covered facility footprint and gross square footage data, the report carries that forward and indicates the data as estimated. And the way the report ranks the facilities is in terms of percentage reduction versus that base year based on those that identified projects. So let's take a look at the report. Now, originally, when I had prepared my slide for this, you can advance the next. Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. I hope no one in this meeting is looking at this on their phone. I hope you all have large monitors that you're sitting in front of, because I understand that this is a little bit of an eye chart. Now, when I first ran this report, unfortunately, since there was no implemented project data in CTS for DOE since 2015, all you could see were zeros on this report. So no progress on the deep energy retrofit report. But this morning I went into CTS and based on some ESPC data that we have here at FEMP, I went ahead and populated two projects. One, the Y12 ESPC that was implemented in 2019, that would count toward this. And then the ESPC that was awarded last year at NREL, I went ahead and entered them in the system so you can get an idea of how this report will present the data. So what it's doing is showing you the number of projects awarded since FY 2019, and then it shows you for each year your covered facility annual energy use, and then the annual energy savings from all implemented projects in that fiscal year. So that annual energy savings is annually recurring. So it goes on to the next year and the next year, and typically up to 15 to 20 years of savings for a typical project. A lot of ESPCs are 20 years. So that savings is annually recurring. And then as you add additional projects or award additional projects and report it in CTS, the additional savings begins to accrue across. And you can see just that one project at the Y12 plant resulted in annual energy savings of almost 16% of the footprint for the plant in the year 2019. So that last column there is the key to look at. As you begin reporting on all these projects over time, those percentages, some of them, those percentages will be above a 40% reduction. And then that means the entire square footage of that covered facility then can count toward the deep energy retrofit goal. And you will also get an idea of how the agency overall is doing in terms of percentage reduction from facility energy use in the top line total there. So again, the importance is to report on these projects. It's required by the law, and it's required to be reported in CTS to be tracked for the deep energy retrofit goal. So the next slide is a slightly different take on energy savings versus your annual covered facility footprint. So the red bar is showing this is data right out of CTS, And so you can see with the period where the reporting was active up to 2015, all of those and all that annual savings there in the white on top reflects reflects energy savings that have been avoided by the projects that you reported. So without those projects being reported, DOE would have used 24% more in 2015 than it would have otherwise. That cumulative annual energy savings number stayed the same all the way from 2015 until this morning when I entered in the data for the 2019 Y12 project, where it bumped up slightly. So this is just like another way. This is another reason why you should be reporting on your implemented projects. It shows the good work that you've been doing, and it presents to you the counterfactual of how much we are savings from the investment we are making. The EUI metric is useful, but we all know that that is impacted by all kinds of other variables that affect agency energy use on site. But this is really why it's important to track the implementation of these projects, these efficiency projects, and the annual energy savings. And then the next slide is as you turn your attention to reporting on these projects, what you should be looking at. One is make sure that your covered facility annual footprint is up to date. Have been noticing that there are some facilities where it seems to be pulling data from the dashboard that has been the same energy use for a particular facility for many years. That is not accurate. We know energy does not stay the same in a facility for the same year. So it appears that the dashboard itself is just whenever there's no reporting, it just moves the previous year's data forward. That is something that needs to be corrected. And then what essentially DOE needs to do is report on all efficiency projects initiated since 2019, including the annual estimated energy savings. Initiated, again, in this case, means if you've completed the design portion of the project or the investment grade audit is completed, you can go ahead and report it and take credit. And critically, make sure that you include projects executed with direct funding in addition to any ESPCs or UESCs reported. Those are also required to be reported under EISA. And you have, since 2019, about $91 million of projects from direct funds that need to be reported in CTS that you can claim credit for. And then lastly, if you are conducting a measurement and verification follow-up on those implemented projects, if you go ahead and enter that measured savings, I'd recommend go ahead and entering that, particularly if the measured savings are more than the original estimated savings, you'll get more bang for your buck on that goal in this case. And I think that's all I have on the deep energy retrofit goal.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that, Chris. That was really informative. I know for me, I've learned a lot just as far as since I've been here with DER. It certainly can be challenging, but we're here to help. Now that we have a better understanding of what constitutes as a project, we can certainly, have a better opportunity
And
to
Elizabeth,
submit those projects.
we here at FEMP are also available to help. So if in fact you have those measured and project data in your dashboard already and they just not have been uploaded to CTS, we can certainly help you with that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right. So again, thank you for that, Chris. I think it's really important that that we, follow what Chris said. It's really important that we follow those guidelines because we are a little deficient. And of course, we have worked really hard to try to update the dashboard. So it'll be a lot easier for you to report those projects. Okay, great. Thank you again, Chris. Chris has shown us some great ways to get credit. Now we're on to the next phase. we now have come to the really important part of EISA 432 reporting requirements and how to enter EISA 432 data to the sustainability dashboard. I now would like to introduce Cody Rakoff. Cody is a sustainability analyst in SPO, providing data and analytic support in the core areas of ZEVs, deep energy retrofits, CFE, and climate adaptation. Welcome, Cody.
Thank you. Yeah, as Elizabeth said, my name is Cody Rakoff. You can find me in Outlook or Microsoft Teams as Martin Rakoff. I've been with SPO since April this year, and I'm the one who translates all of your data from the dashboard into the correct format for CTS. So I'm going to talk to you about what's required for reporting, a brief overview of how to enter your data into the dashboard. Entering data will be covered by Danny after me in more detail, but I'm also going to give you a look at Portfolio Manager and show you some resources you can use that will help you out. Next slide, please. Okay, so this graphic kind of shows what goes into the dashboard and then what we report out. So reporting from sites, we take covered facilities, evaluations, measures, follow-up, energy managers, and that is all direct entry into the dashboard by sites throughout the year with snapshots in March. And then we get basic facility information from FIMS, and then export in October annually. And then there's benchmarking information from Portfolio Manager, where sites share with us and we export in March annually. So all of this goes into the dashboard and then I go through it, look for errors, translate it to the correct format, and report it into CTS. And so just for a brief reminder, CTS is the web-based reporting system to certify compliance with EISA 432. So uploaded data, again, includes coverage status, evaluations, findings, M&V, benchmarking, and then FEMP takes a snapshot of the data at the end of March and at other times throughout the year to document incremental progress. So next slide, please. Okay, so entering data on the dashboard. I'm going to show you a few screenshots of the dashboard, and if you need more assistance, feel free to contact me. We can set up a time to go over the dashboard's functions. There is a new user training that SPO is hosting on September 24th at 2 p.m. So feel free to attend. I can send you an invitation if you don't have one. It's a good opportunity to learn the system. But a few examples, so I'll show you how to find evaluations and ECMs to upload. And if you look at this screenshot of the dashboard home screen, so you'll see in the top left a data tab. Click that, and then once you click that, you'll see a drop-down menu where you will see enter data. So next slide, please. Okay, and so now you can click on enter data, download template, or upload bulk data, upload bulk data. And so we recommend downloading the dashboard template and then uploading the bulk data. Please remember while you're doing this to include evaluation completion dates. Those are very, very helpful. Next slide, please. And so if you navigate down the enter data page, you'll find investments, improvement measures, workforce, and community. Here you'll be able to enter ECM data through manual entry or bulk data upload. We recommend utilizing the dashboard's efficiency and cost conservation measure upload template. However, a table like the one shown below could provide a summary of identified opportunities, including total estimated savings, costs, and payback periods. As I said earlier, Danny will go into a bit more depth with this, and feel free to reach out to me after if you'd like, and we can set up some times to go over the dashboard. But I wanted to just give you a little bit of high level on that. And so now I'll give you some information on Portfolio Manager and some resources, and then I'll hand it off to Danny. Next slide. Okay, so Portfolio Manager, as I mentioned on my first slide, is shared with SPO, and then we report out that data. But what is Portfolio Manager? So Portfolio Manager is an online tool that can be used to measure, track, and benchmark energy, water, waste, and greenhouse gas emissions of a single facility or a group of assets against similar assets. So an energy score is assigned to each asset based on how it compares to similar assets. The U.S. Energy Information Administration Commercial Building Energy Consumption Survey is the primary source of data for this comparison. Assets receive an energy score based on a scale of 1 to 100, and a score of 50 representing median energy performance, while a score of 75 indicates that the asset's performance is better than 75% of similar assets nationwide. So assets with scores 75 or higher are eligible for Energy Star certifications. It has other tools too, which you may find useful, like financial tools. It can verify and track savings, it can create performance reports. And now we'll take a little bit of a look at what that looks like. Next slide, please. So here is the Portfolio Manager home screen. And I will show you a little bit about how to use Portfolio Manager, how to create an account. Next slide. So creating an account, you can follow these steps. By the way, all of these links are live. They do work. So when we upload the slides, feel free to go through and use them. But create a user account, be sure to coordinate with other users to ensure there are no duplications of data, records, or facilities. Add your asset, choose the type, use function, and construction status, and then asset details, location, size, use, and IDs. Add utility data through the property summary page, and then use templates that can be used to upload utility data for multiple properties. And then make sure that you share this with us. So share property with SPO by you're going to select contacts, add username, and then you can use our email address or the username. Next slide, please. So with regards to the last slide, if you use that last link, Portfolio Manager training materials, that does contain videos that detail how to create accounts, how to use the application. But then we have all of these various resources that you can use. So we have, federal building energy use benchmarking guidance, metering guidance, metering data analysis needs and existing tools, best practices for metering, prioritizing building water meter applications. All of these are fantastic. I recommend that you check them out. But that is all that I have for you. So do feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, you can find me on Outlook at martin.rakoff@hq.doe.gov or reach out to the sustainability inbox. But thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Cody. That was very informative. Okay, now we've come to the final part of our presentation. We are very fortunate today to have Danny Alcon. Danny works at Sandia National Lab in Albuquerque. Danny is an energy engineer on the Energy and Infrastructure Data Management Team at Sandia National Laboratories in New Mexico. Danny works on many energy-related topics, including energy audits, ESPCs, and manages the site energy consumption, ECMs, and the DOE Sustainability Dashboard. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and good afternoon to everyone. Today, I'll be giving you an overview of Sandia's method of tracking ECMs from cradle to grave, and that includes uploading them to the DOE dashboard and also archiving them when they've been completed. And a little bit about Sandia, New Mexico. We have over 700 buildings. That's approximately 7 million square feet. And the energy conservation measures, ECMs, start with the EISA energy audits, and they go through the yearly cycle, 4-year cycle that was mentioned before. We typically have 10 to 20 buildings that are audited per year. And out of those audits, we have 100 to 200 ECMs that come out of that. One of the first things we do in our audit kickoff meeting that we have with our team, and the team includes the building managers, that includes a building manager, energy, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, and an architect, and an energy engineer like myself. We go over what has been completed over the last 4 years and what ECMs can be removed, and the status of any ECMs that have happened during the previous audits. From that audit, once it gets completed, which is about a 6 months process, in the audit itself, there is a table that lists all the new ECMs, and that table gets copied over to the spreadsheet that you see on the bottom of the page. That is our internal spreadsheet, and we add another couple columns and coloring coding that I'll go over in a second. But basically, we add a column that has action items, and that's the drop down that you see in the blue on the right-hand side. Each ECM we go over and see if it's a controls issue that needs to be addressed with our BAS team. If it's preventative maintenance, that we need to create a Maximo or a case ticket in our data management system. If it's a repair, or maybe it's an internal project that we want to create a bunch of ECMs and we have some funding with the energy savings that we can implement that. And maybe it's not an ECM at all, so we'll remove it. And then if more information is required, then I further develop the scope of work. That's typically the ones that we highlighted in yellow. That means there's more scope of work. And if it's not an ECM, we'll highlight it in red and read it out. And then if the ECM is appropriate for the ESPC that we have that we're going to start in the near future, then it's tagged for that. And then the ECM might be in progress. It might be a project that's being completed. So we mark that. And then it might have another item that we need to add in there. But that is our temporary spreadsheet that we use to track the new ECMs. Once this has been completed and we're ready to upload to the DOE dashboard, that's the next slide, please. So this is the process that we go through with the DOE dashboard. And since we have so many ECMs, we do the bulk upload, and that's what I'll be reviewing here. This is within the sustainability dashboard on the main page. You go to enter data. That's the first step. You could do that or click the icon here, and that will take you to the next slide, please. This is the data entry home slide that Chris showed before. And basically, you go to the phase identified confirmed, and you go to select the download. And once you download that, that'll download the template into your download box. And next slide, please. So this is the spreadsheet itself, the template, and it has two tabs on it. It has the new measures tab, which that's where we obviously put the new measures in, and then it'll have all your existing measures in there. And that'll have all the list of ones that are already up in the DOE dashboard. It is very important to follow the instructions. They're pretty self-explanatory. All the columns in red need to be completed at a minimum before you upload that. So next slide, please. So site assigned measures, there's a number of columns here that, like I mentioned, the red ones need to be completed, but I'm going to focus on the two that we have lessons learned over the years that we use. And the first one is the site assigned measure. And that we put in the service ticket, if it's Maximo, that's a database that we track service calls, or if it's a repair, or an opportunity in case, which is another database. And we put those databases and we try to have one of those numbers created for each one of the ECMs. And then the next major lessons learned that we have is the naming convention for the ECMs. Previously, we've had up to 1,600 ECMs, and not all of them had the same naming convention because they were uploaded by different people. So we have standardized that naming convention. And the first thing we do is include the building number and then a brief ECM name. And the reason we have the building number is that if you're in the dashboard and you want to sort your ECMs by building, this is the easiest way to do it. So those are two lessons learned and what we do in our ECMs when we go to upload those is mainly the building name is important for us because we have so many different buildings that have ECMs that go into the dashboard. Next sheet, please. At the very end of that template, there is additional information, and that's where we put scope of work in for the ECMs. For example, it could be number of lighting fixtures, what rooms, horsepower on motors, what air handler, and so forth. And that makes it easier to track what the scope of work that needs to be done. Next slide, please. So once that is completed, this is the upload process. And basically you go back to the main data and the data entry, and you go back to the phase identified confirmed, and then you select the upload, and then you find that file that you want to upload, and then you go ahead and select that, and it'll upload those to the dashboard. What you want to make sure is that you're working with the latest download template. What I mean is you don't want a huge gap between when you download that template and then fill it out and upload, because it will not capture any changes that you make in the DOE dashboard. And when you upload this, it'll override what's in the DOE dashboard. So that is another recommendation. Next step, please. Next slide. So once ECMs are uploaded into the DOE dashboard, we have a separate pipeline tracking spreadsheet that is based off of the upload template from the DOE dashboard, and it has additional columns. I'm not showing this larger spreadsheet, but just for example, we have a color coding that if the ECM gets completed, then it gets red coded, and then we know it needs to be removed from the DOE dashboard. And we have additional information on that with regard to how we're gonna fund the ECM, where it's gonna be tracked in those case, and where it is towards the implementation. If it's part of a project, is the project at 60%, 70%, or 100%, and so forth. Next slide, please. So once we have the ECMs that we know have been completed, the red ones that you saw before, there's two methods of going up and showing that they've been completed and archiving them in the dashboard. And I'll go over through both methods. One is through the spreadsheet, downloading that template, and now you're in the existing measure template or tab. And then under that, there's a measure status, and that has a pull down. And you have two selections that you can do for measures that are completed. It's operational, and we highly suggest to add into notes on the completion, project costs, and energy savings. And that's something that our goal is to get better at that. And then we also have canceled duplicates, because previously we've had a large number of duplicates within the dashboard, and we have been cleaning up the dashboard. And then once you've done that, the next is just uploading it back to the dashboard like I showed previously. The next method is within the dashboard itself, and you can go in back to the main page, data entry, just like before, energy conservation measure, and then there's enter data, and you select that. It'll take you to the next slide, please. And within that, each ECM, you can select, edit the ECM, and then it'll allow you back to that same column measure status. You can select operational cancel from the menu, and then you hit save. And that basically does what I showed before, but on the DOE dashboard. And that's good for if you have 1 or 2 or 3 ECMs that you have completed, not the bulk upload. Just a FYI, if you're a smaller site and you want to add a small number of ECMs, you can go through the dashboard and add those ECMs through the dashboard. Next slide, please. So this is an overview again of the process that we have. we go through the Sandia EISA audits, and ECMs are born there. And we have our proprietary or our in-house Sandia audit ECM spreadsheet that I showed you before. Then we upload it to the DOE sustainability dashboard. It also gets put into our pipeline tracking spreadsheet that we track the status of that again. And then once projects are completed, we go into the DOE dashboard and mark them completed. Next slide, please. So in summary, the DOE dashboard is a great place to have all of your ECMs in a centralized location. That is really one of the positives, and there are many more positives to that. The DOE dashboard is not an analytics tool. You're better off downloading the template and using an Excel spreadsheet to do the analytics. And then another recommendation is the measure name, including the building number. That has been really important for us. And then also keeping the measure name brief and consistent from ECM to ECM. And then adding notes on the scope of work at the end is very helpful. Like I mentioned before, you always want to make sure you downloaded the latest template and working off of the latest list of ECMs in the dashboard and uploading that as soon as possible. And then, like I showed you, have a process for tracking the ECMs from cradle to grave. That has been very helpful. We've developed that recently in-house. And then one of the challenges is tracking all those because they can be, like I showed, a repair ticket, a maintenance ticket, a project, ESPC. So that is challenging, but having that process is very helpful. And then very important to keep that dashboard up to date. At some point, we had 1,600 ECMs on there. This last year, we've been cleaning it up, and we're down to the about 600 ECMs. So that is our Sandia best practices. And yeah, feel free to contact me if you have any further questions. Thank you,
Okay,
Elizabeth.
great. Great. That was really wonderful, Danny. So we just have a couple minutes left. We do have, if anybody has any quick questions, or we can certainly answer them. But most importantly, we have recorded this session, so we will be putting this in the sustainability dashboard. That's really important in case you change positions and you're not going to be doing that anymore. The next person will understand how to submit data to the dashboard. So this will be available. I will email this out to everyone after the presentation, of course, but most importantly, we'll have it available in the dashboard. So as a reminder, EISA data will be due at the end of February. So if you're unaware of those deadlines or need more information, please reach out also to the SPO office. This is our email, sustainability@hq.doe.gov. So I think that is the end of our presentation. It doesn't look like we have any Q&A. It was a lot of information, I know, but of course, please reach out to any of us. Just reach out to the email address and we'll try to address any questions that you have. And with that said, thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. That is the end of our session today. Have a great day.
Thank you.